now the award for the most spines tingled by a non-corporeal being.
Terrifying, more frightening. This can't go on. You've got to do better, Jack. We should all...
Back in the 2000s, if you wanted to go down the basic bitch goth pipeline, you really only had 4 avenues of doing so. You either discovered Marilyn Manson and terrorized your Sunday school by slinging out Richard Dawkins quotes and never shutting up about how your music scares people. Or you were just some schlub who ended up watching Invader Zim and got sucked into the whole I hate humans lol-so random humor pit of Johann Vasquez's work. Now, the third is, pretty simple. You just got into some emo bands. Maybe you liked My Chemical Romance. Maybe you were a big fan of Aiden, or you were one of those kids that really liked him, and you ended up just moving down to actual 80s goth music over the course of a few years. But I would say that number 4 is probably the most common method. And that would be that you were someone who ended up watching Nightmare Before Christmas with your family, and in doing so, would slip and fall directly into Burton mania, standing and praising everything that Tim Burton's grubby little hands touched. As I've pointed out in a couple of videos at this point, during the 2000s and even really the 90s, Tim Burton was one of those directors that was inescapable. And despite my ribbing, I'm not even trying to shit on anyone who found their way into this stuff through the pipelines I mentioned. I'll let you guess which one I fell into, but alas, Tim Burton was a massive part of my childhood, and to this day, I still love most of his classic movies. While among his animated works, A Court's Bride still stands as my favorite, but that's not to say that anything will ever really top Nightmare Before Christmas of its throne. Nightmare Before Christmas is Tim's most influential and famous work, and it's that way for a reason. To this day, you can see it all over the place during the holiday season. Jack Skellington is like the Christmas version of the Misfits logo. He's everywhere, on every piece of disposable product crap that you can buy, and he's more or less an icon and a representation of the culture his movie was birthed from. And this is for good reason. The original movie is deserving of its classic status, being a timeless claymation project, rife with originality, whimsical humor, and a soundtrack unparalleled. I mean, come on, Danny Elfman composed this thing, and he even sang on all the tracks as Jack himself. So it was such an iconic film, especially one owned and pimped out by the king of rats, Mickey Mouse himself. You would expect it to contain some tie-in video games along with all the rest of the countless merch and slop that Nightmare Before Christmas's logo and Jack Skellington face has been put on. But there's actually only a couple. Now, most famously, there's the Halloween Town section from Kingdom Hearts, which for most people is the sole place that this film has ever been translated into the video game medium, and probably the most high-quality product it was put on. But a close second would be the more well-known Game Boy Advance title, The Pumpkin King. It's a decent game, but it's mostly just your typical Game Boy shovelware crap, and as such is more or less forgotten to time and outside of those who maybe played it growing up because, well, it's an old Game Boy game and those are becoming increasingly obscure as the years go on. But beyond these two, there is one more game that got made, and one that seems to be mostly forgotten to time, despite how big of a deal it actually was when it came out. And that would be Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge. A big deal back in 2005, and today a forgotten relic outside of the occasional meme here and there. Oogie's Revenge is the lost Nightmare Before Christmas game from the PS2 and original Xbox, where we got to experience what would happen if the movie was transformed into a 6th generation hack and slash video game. Devil May Christmas, or God of Halloween, if you will. And I know this all sounds ass backwards and stupid, but that's actually not the case. The game that we ended up getting was more or less a love letter to the movie and a fantastic experience with rich mechanics and some genuinely great atmosphere. It's honestly a must-play for anyone who grew up loving the film, or any curious explorer looking for a hidden gem to experience. So with that said, why don't we just cut to brass tacks and get to it. Let's talk about the Nightmare Before Christmas game that everyone forgot.
Welcome to our Haunted Mansion holiday. Every night, when the air is deathly still, that is the time when ghosts are present, practicing their terror with ghoulish delight.
Alright, for the 5 of you who have no idea what Nightmare Before Christmas is, it's a classic 90s holiday film about a weird world where various realms exist, each being their own distinct little worlds based around a respective holiday. Our main character is Jack Skellington, the Pumpkin King and Patriarch of Halloween Town. The film follows his misadventures of growing bored of Halloween and desiring something more, ending up hatching a plan to take over Christmas and bastardizing it by not understanding anything about being holly jolly and only really being able to provide something that's mischievous and scary. This is all contrasted with the other side of the movie's plot about the villain, Oogie Boogie, who seizes the opportunity to take over the town and try to kill Santa, only for Jack to save the day and all to be right with the world by the end of the film. Now look, this is a really loose and fast synopsis, but I'm sure about 99% of you have already seen this movie. And for the 1% who hasn't, sorry for the spoilers, get good, you should have watched the movie as a kid. Anyway, needless to say, the movie is more than just its very simple and fun little plot. Most of the movie's charm comes from the aforementioned claymation animation, the character designs, and the atmosphere, as well as the musical elements. This movie was a breakthrough in the claymation world, and it's, to this day, still a pretty breathtaking film to take in when you consider this was all done by hand. And that's why I wanted to give this little synopsis for anybody who's coming into this game, because in order to really understand what makes Oogie's Revenge such a great game, you need to understand the magic of the source material, like its music and especially its visual medium. Nightmare is one of those films where you can pause at any point and it looks like a piece of art. So just imagine how hard it would be to take that and transform that into a low-poly PS2 game and still have it look good. And more directly, how do you take a story as simple yet whimsical and non-action filled as Nightmare Before Christmas and turn it into a hack and slash action game? To break this all down on a basic level, Oogie's Revenge is a sequel to the original film, though it contains essentially much of the same plot elements as before. Like the original, it's a story about Oogie Boogie and his minions taking over Halloween Town in an attempt to later take over other holidays in order to become the king of all of them. It's a simple story, but one that stays familiar to its source material while changing just enough aspects to let its premise and gameplay make a bit more sense in the grand scheme of things, especially in how they transform the film into some bastardized Japanese action game. Because yes, That whole Devil May Christmas joke isn't really a joke. The game's introduction sets the stage for the rest of the narrative, where after Halloween, Jack learns his lesson about trying to take over other holidays that don't belong to him, and instead he decides to embark on a new journey, this time to see what the world holds outside of Halloween Town, in hope of making the next Halloween the most awful yet. Before he leaves, he speaks with Dr. Finkelstein, who shares with him his newest creation, a slime whip type contraption known as the Soul Robber, the item that serves as the game's main mechanic going forward. And after this scene, Jack sets off only to return months later to his town being empty and in disarray, with skeletons rising from their graves and attacking Jack.
I'm Jack. Jack Skeleton. What? You're not from Halloween Town, are you?
Is this thing on? My dearly abhorred denizens of Halloween Town, this is Oogie Boogie speaking. Today I bring you a joyous announcement. First of all, in place of Jack Skellington, yours truly is now the new ruler of Halloween Town. And second, as of today, this very hour, this exact moment, I declare this town's name will be changed to Oogie Town.
As we investigate, we come across a few of the different townfolk, and as we meet them, they tell us of the horrors that have come in during Jack's absence, with Lock, Shock, and Barrel resurrecting Oogie, and them taking over the town and working with the good doctor to create the monsters that now seek us out. As we make our way into the first area of the game, we confront Oogie Boogie and get a taste of the whimsical musical elements of the game.
Jack the Pumpkin King! Finally made it, huh? Oh, I've been waiting. So how do you like my Oogie Town?
It's over! It's over!
As silly as this is and almost out of nowhere for a game to go with its gameplay, honestly, this whole little rhythm game section fits really well. The system is definitely pretty janky and kind of broken at times, but it works good enough to be passable, and it plays directly into the musical side of Nightmare Before Christmas, making that actually work in the realm of a game without it being a pain in the ass to actually sit through, like cutscenes full of songs or every single encounter being delivered with song. The way it works here is that during boss fights or big encounters, they will begin to sing and the song will go on for a little bit, but it'll eventually reach a spot where it repeats itself. In order for the song to move forward, and in this case the literal plot to move forward with the exposition, you have to make sure that you're playing the rhythm game section correctly to do damage to the boss, as well as effectively move the song forward. Upon completion, you'll get the end of the section and usually met with a cutscene.
Beginner's luck, if you ask me. Don't worry, we'll meet again.
After we take Oogie Boogie down, at least for the first time, we get the real start of the game. Now with our true journey ahead of us to save Halloween Town and stop whatever stupid plan that he has up his sleeve. But it's also here where the game begins to open up and give us a little bit of exploration that we can enjoy. Aside from the novelty of playing a Japanese action game based on Nightmare Before Christmas, what really makes this whole thing as special as it is its environments and aesthetics. Now, if you're familiar with my channel or a regular viewer, then you're probably groaning or extremely excited because I never stop talking about atmosphere because it's my favorite aspect of just about any piece of media. And here it is no different. The main allure to Oogie's Revenge is just how much life is breathed into the town and world of Nightmare Before Christmas. The town is a place built with small details in mind. And the more you explore it, the more you can see that there was a lot of love for the film here. From the little shops and buildings, to the actual character designs and renditions in the game. It all just, like I said, brings everything to life. And yeah, obviously this is just PS2 graphics and they aren't going to be nearly as captivating as, claymation. But the game does actually do a pretty good job of going above and beyond to spark life into the town that we only got little glimpses of from the film. And where this shows even more is especially when we start to meet the various inhabitants of Halloween Town.
Jack, you've returned.
Is it true? The whole town is booby-trapped?
Oh, it's too embarrassing to talk about. We brought this all upon ourselves. Say, care to buy anything? We've got some prime heads and torsos, but they'll cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah, this isn't the most story-rich or lore-driven thing in the world, but it doesn't need to be. I think anyone who grew up watching this movie and enjoyed the other media around it will get a real sense of joy and whimsy just taking this place in and getting to see it in all of its glory. I mean, just look at how jam-packed Jack's house is with details. You get a sense of what his home is like. It's a place to see trophies that we earn in the game, giving it more of a mechanical function, but there's also just a lot of little callbacks to the movie, and everything is very lovingly put together. It feels like a lived-in environment, and one that really fits Jack as a character. Now, to be fair, this level of detail and love is a bit hit and miss, because there's some aspects of the game where you'll be in a level or an environment and it just kind of feels like a standard video game environment, but it is from the era, so what do you expect? Where it matters, the quality is there, especially in the hub world. It's just a pleasure to experience, and probably much more than anyone could have realistically expected from what should have just been a dogshit half-assed movie tie-in game. But instead, we get this. And what makes it even better is, like I said, the characters. Not only do we see all these familiar faces come back again in a much deeper sense, but they even got original voice actors where they could. Not everyone reprised their original voices, but characters like Oogie Boogie still have Ken Frame voicing them, as well as they even got Chris Sandon, the original voice of Jack, to come back and reprise his role. But where I think everything comes together is in how Oogie's Revenge actually fleshes out the society as a whole within Halloween Town. As I showed with the witches cutscene before, they run a general store, one that specializes specifically in potions and, again, fleshes out their purpose within Halloween Town. Another aspect of this is when we head to the graveyard and we meet the hanging tree and its 5 hangmen. Even Behemoth gets a little bit of fleshing out, as when we go out to the pumpkin patch, we find out that this is the place that he's in charge of taking care of and protecting. And it's all these small and little things that might seem insignificant in another game that really make Halloween Town and the world of Nightmare Before Christmas, again, to use the term, come to life. The town really does just breathe. It reminds me a lot of how I felt the first time I played the original Silent Hill, and I was expecting to be met with a lifeless husk of a game that's kind of liminal and very PS1-y, and while yes, that is very much Silent Hill 1, When you do meet various characters in the town, especially ones like Lisa Garland in the hospital, and they tell you about their life and who they are, it does a lot to make it feel like a tangible, real place that you could go. And that's the exact feeling that lives here in Oogie's Revenge. And that's really the biggest selling point to this game. It has this palpable and great atmosphere that just really immerses you. And its use of fixed camera angles and even the survival horror style flavor text of Jack commenting on just about anything you go and click on, it really makes this thing a worthwhile experience. But as good as this is, we do need to talk about the other half of the game, which is the game's gameplay. And that's a bit of a complicated story. This game was developed by Capcom, and you can tell that by just about every angle of it. Literally, the game uses fixed camera angles, and it's full of traditionally survival horror style layouts and progression, with many areas being inaccessible until you either find an item to progress to a certain part of the game, or you solve a puzzle. If this sounds familiar, well, you've probably played Resident Evil at some point. And where this really does come full circle is again with the flavor text. Because I can't think of any other studio or game style incorporating this sort of flavor text outside of survival horror, especially in conjunction with all the other mechanics at play.
We're sorry. All of our representatives are still assisting other customers. Please remain on the line, as we value your call.
So in order to understand Oogie's Revenge, we really do need to talk about Devil May Cry. Oogie's Revenge was built with the initial standpoint and basic construction and foundation of the first Devil May Cry game. Now, a little bit of history. Devil May Cry was actually one of the many incarnations of what would have been Resident Evil 4 when they were trying to figure out just what direction they were going to go with the series. And as the story of this development goes, Capcom would use that specific build to turn it into what we now know as Devil May Cry. And if you've ever played the first outing in the series, it's a lot different from 2, 3, 4, and especially 5. Well, yes, this is where most of the staple mechanics and foundations came from. The first Devil May Cry was definitely much more and much richer in its survival horror influence, with the same kind of flavor text, the more extreme camera angles, and even the combat feeling a little clunky with the way the game is presented. If you were to put both games side by side, it's very obvious just how similar they are, and that when they went to make Oogie's Revenge, they were taking the template of Devil May Cry. And while sure, you can chalk this up to just sharing ideas, devs working probably on both teams, where it all comes full circle is just how Nightmare takes Devil May Cry's highly specific mechanics for itself, like the style meter, having an emphasis on chaining combos and killing groups of enemies as fast as you can, and also doing it all in the most visually appealing way possible, while the game even gives you a score rank at the end of each level. And for the most part, this works extremely well. But it is also where the clunkiness of this entire idea of shoving a Tim Burton property into this kind of game comes to be. Because in Devil May Cry, when the combat starts and that action-packed, super cool theme music comes in, it plays out like this. Only for it to appear in Oogie's Revenge, where This Is Halloween comes on instead of a cool industrial track, and it, well, yeah. And before you ask, it does get annoying, and it does play every time you're in combat. But while we're on the topic of combat, let's dig into that just a little further. The combat really is just watered down DMC without the gunplay, but the whip does give you some unique abilities. Rather than just being a stand-in for a sword, you can actually use it to grab enemies and throw them, twirl them around and use them as a weapon themselves, and all sorts of other fun stuff. But just like with the music, it's also where some of the cracks in the game show. Because for how competent it can be at times and how fun it is to actually experience, it gets to be extremely finicky and frustrating whenever the game throws an enemy at you that doesn't work as well with this basic combat system. The best example of this is the flying enemies. Typically in combat, you're trying to dodge, slash, grab, and figure out the puzzle for each fight of how to take down all the enemies as stylishly and as efficiently as possible, and it's pretty smooth. But then when these flying enemies come in, because you are a ground-based mob essentially, and your whip is designed to grab things on the ground, while you can try to catch the flying enemies, there's no real lock-on feature, which makes this a total pain in the ass to try and do, especially when you account for the fact that the hitboxes and general accuracy of this game is not exactly up to standard. So when these assholes show up, it instantly turns a really fun game into something that keeps whittling my fucking health away and driving me off the fucking edge. But I digress. This criticism extends to basically every other aspect of the game, where some parts are designed really well and play amazingly, and others are designed like a clunky, janky mess. Take, for example, the game's other main component or mechanic, which is the suits that you get. There are two of them. The first is Jack's Scarecrow outfit, where you can spit flames and set things on fire. And while this costume is a really cool looking one, and is probably my favorite in the game, it's also extremely mechanically useful. Because like I said, you're able to unlock different areas by burning down foliage or wood that's in the way, as well as it makes combat a different experience. You can take enemies down in different ways, and it changes the way that you prioritize combat, and in conjunction with the Soul Robber, switching between them allows you to better handle some of the harder enemies that come in as you get further into the game. Now, for all the praise I've just given the Scarecrow outfit, the same cannot really be said about the other costume, which is the Sandy Claus suit. This one, well, it's not as cool looking, but is very accurate to the movie and is fun to see, is kind of useless and frustrating. The main component of the Sandy Claus suit is to throw out these presents that act like bombs, and they're used to do some splash damage to enemies as well as scare ghosts out of different areas. Like when you try to get to the pumpkin patch and you have to scare ghosts out of pumpkins that are blocking your path. Now, in practice, this should be a very easy situation to use. Just throw the bomb out there, let it do its thing, and there you go. The problem is that the range is pitiful, and you have to get way too close to these things and try and throw it down, and almost every time, you will end up taking a hit before it goes off. It's a cool idea, and one that could have been great for crowd control, but again, in practice, it just falls short and becomes a pain to deal with. And sadly, this is the kind of janky yin-yang sort of thing you're going to be dealing with throughout the entire game with almost every other mechanic. Especially the bosses.
Dr. Finkelstein, why are you doing this?
Ah, Jack, I see you managed to make it here. You've been busy, Jack. I think it's time for you to rest.
Oogie switched your brain.
Shall we begin? I think you'll like this device.
Alright, so the bosses are also a janky mess. But they're not all terrible. Actually, some of them are really good. You have some more traditional boss fights, like with the giant spider, but then you have the predominant amount of them, which are these kind of sing-songy ones that you have with the first encounter with Oogie Boogie, as well as a few others. And then you get these kind of weird middle ground bosses, like Dr. Finkelstein, who is... I really don't know how to describe this one. It's not that it's a super weird boss for any other sort of game, but it is very mechanically different than what we typically get within Oogie's Revenge, so we'll get there when we get there. The basics of these are pretty simple. You dodge the main enemy, you get a few hits in while taking down the supplemental enemies that they spawn, and you collect music notes. Once you fill up your music meter, you get to take part in that rhythm game section that I mentioned prior. And while this too can be a little bit frustrating at times, it's mostly just because it's a rhythm game, and if you're like me and you suck at those, then you're going to have a hard time. But once you get used to it, it actually works pretty well, and like I said before, is a lot of fun. Your reward for completing these the best you can is a massive hit of damage, effectively making this the de facto way to fight bosses. It's also where the game shows more of its own character. Because like I said, you have the whole song mechanic where you'll start a boss fight and they'll start the song and they'll usually get through the first verse, maybe a chorus, and then it will repeat until you're able to push the song forward by doing more damage to the boss and getting more of the song, which also acts as exposition to tell you a bit more of the mentality and the reasons as to why things are happening, and also because the music's pretty cool. Now, where this actually becomes janky and not just an issue of not being good at rhythm games is when you get bosses like the aforementioned Dr. Finkelstein, where the game will flip the rules on you. See, here the boss doesn't take any real damage to music attacks, and in general, the music minigame can actually be kind of ignored here. Unlike everyone else you fight, here you have to wait for an opening to grab the doctor's skull and pull it open. And then you have to run, grab half of his brain, and with your soul robber, throw it right back into his head. Now this sounds pretty simple. It sounds like this should be one of the easiest bosses so far. The problem is just like what I mentioned with the flying enemies, the hitboxes and the hit direction and everything like that is not exactly up to snuff. So it becomes an incredibly frustrating mess when you don't get that pitch perfect angle and Finkelstein's brain bounces right out of his head, turning what should be a simple and easy section into an incredibly frustrating and overly long venture. And while you do this, you're also attempting to dodge and avoid all the projectiles and environmental hazards that are going off around you. And Dr. Finkelstein also spins, making getting that brain in his head even harder of a task to accomplish. Now, most of the boss fights are not on this level of jank and frustration, but some of them get close. But Finkelstein really is where the cracks show the most, and while yes, they could have done this better, it also is just the limitations of the PS2. This sort of broken boss fight due to dodgy mechanical implementation is nothing that's rare on the console. You can find it in almost any game here, except for the top tier ones, and even those have some funky bits with them. Now, I'm sure it's starting to become readily apparent that the gameplay side of Oogie's Revenge isn't really my favorite, and honestly, yes, that is kind of true. While I do find the game to be really fun and very competent when it's in the right direction and it's actually functioning the way it's supposed to, it is pretty tedious to deal with during its worst moments, and it can at times just be a bit of a chore to deal with. Like the pumpkin patch section of the game, where you're just endlessly fighting mob after NPC after mob. It takes what is fun combat and just makes it overstay its welcome until it becomes a bit of a slog. And that is this game's main problem. Even more so than the jank. I can deal with Jank. I love Kane and Lynch too. I like the original Katamaris with their weird control schemes. Fuck, I like Blinks the cat. Okay? I am no stranger to Jank, and I'm not somebody who typically lets it ruin a game for them. And while this is far from ruining the game for me, when the game does turn into a slog, it just diminishes what's here. And that is the biggest thing that I have to bring up with Oogie's Revenge if you're interested in playing it. While I do think it's a hidden gem and you should, just know it will test your patience. Now, that being said, not all the bosses in combat are like this. Where they shine the most is actually in the mini-bosses, many of them being encounters with the trick-or-treaters. Throughout the game, Lock, Shock, and Barrel will show up, and one of them will stay behind to fight you, bringing a large amount of enemies to aid them. And this is where it's the most simple and straightforward, and where the game becomes the most fun. This is where that Devil May Cry crowd control combat just comes full fruition, and you really get to immerse yourself in it. And this is absolutely fun, because not only is it really giving you the best of the combat in all of its wannabe DMC glory, but also because you finally get to beat up those annoying fucking kids and treat them the way their parents should have when they kept misbehaving. Now, again, just to be clear, I know I've been relatively negative here with the gameplay, and yeah, it can be a little bad here and there, but it's far from being terrible, and honestly, it's more so mid than bad than anything. So for you dorks looking for the next hidden gem in the character action, what a great fucking title, genre, you're not really going to find it here. But what you will find here, and what makes this game a hidden gem, is, like I said before, the atmosphere.
Mayor, are you okay?
Jack, oh, you don't know how happy I am to see your skull. I thought I'd be stuck here forever.
The deeper you get into the game, the more you unlock different areas of the town, and also the more the weather and the environments change. It makes the environments and the atmosphere just pop all more than it already does. And when you start to go into some of the other doors, because yes, the game actually lets you explore them, you get even more variety to this. Like when we go to Christmas Town, where here it's reimagined as this eerie, snow-laden ghost town full of Oogie's bugs and all the skeletons that we're supposed to fight. It's honestly really cool just how much love they put into this section of the game, even though it's far divorced from the typical Halloween Town sections that we've spent the majority of our time running through. But it's also here in these later levels where the game does start to take a bit more liberties and really expand on Tim Burton's world. When we get to the casino, it's definitely one of the standout moments of the game, showing off the more playful horror side of the franchise. But I still think the ending is actually what takes the cake. During the game's final stretch, you enter Oogie's lair, and it goes all out, with chains and lava and just the most end boss area you could imagine. And I say that very lovingly. It's very fun to see this, especially because, again, the game does actually take advantage of the fact that it is a video game and can be a lot more out there. And the final boss is literally when Oogie Boogie turns into a burlap Godzilla covered in Christmas lights. It just brings this whole game full circle into this self-aware piece of media that really understands what its audience wants. And this is why Oogie's Revenge works so well with its atmosphere, and why it's such a fun experience. It balances the yin-yang of the new and the old, both feeling like a loving interpretation of the movie, while expanding on its world in ways that feel like there was a genuine love and attention given to it. Even if the story is more or less just a rehash of the movie, only here it's molded into a pseudo-sequel focused on action and fighting, rather than whimsical drama and heartfelt melancholy. Hence why I really haven't focused on or talked much about the story up until this point. Because that's the thing, the story is more or less described in the intro. Jack is once again morose and bored of Halloween, so he tries to find something to reinvigorate his passion. But unlike the movie, just here it's more generalized and he doesn't go after Christmas specifically. And Oogie takes that role, even though he did much the same in the film. It's serviceable. It's mostly here to give us reasons as to why certain characters are the way they are, why we're fighting endless amounts of skeletons and ghosts, and why Oogie Boogie is back causing all these problems to begin with. It's not bad, but it's not really all that great either. It's just there. It is very much a old school video game plot where it is secondary to the game. And there's no real issue with that, at least in my mind. I mean, look, Oogie's Revenge is far from a masterpiece, and it definitely has its problems and pitfalls. But regardless of all its faults, I can't help but love the game. It's a fantastic experience, and it's a really damn fun game to get into if you can deal with its shortcomings. Is it perfect? Far from it. But it doesn't deserve to be this forgotten niche thing that's only really talked about in YouTube video essays. Oogie's Revenge deserves its flowers and to be seen as the great game that it is, especially if you're a lifelong fan of Nightmare Before Christmas. So with that, I leave it in your hands to seek out and play if you feel so inclined. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed our little excursion down memory lane. Merry Christmas to you all, and here's to the start of a fantastic new year. Now, before you go, this is my wall of shame. The list of names of everyone who decided to give me money and make poor financial decisions just to make sure that I come back at least once or twice a month to throw out a video. All jokes aside, I couldn't do this without them. So thank you to everyone who supports the channel, and it means the world to me. I'm able to actually devote more time to this at this point and get better equipment and all that, so especially considering that all the computer part prices right now are beyond fucked thanks to AI. God bless our future AI overlords and the absolute desecration to everything that we love. But all salt aside, I know this video wasn't like the most deep or life-changing thing. I try to have a bit of a higher, I guess, standard or point with my videos. But with this one, I wanted to make sure I had something for December, and I've been sitting on this game for so long and wanting to talk about it. And it's been hard to kind of place because it's a fun game, but it's also not that deep. It really is if you like Nightmare Before Christmas, you'll like this game. If not, you know, you're shit out of luck. So I had a lot of fun making it. I had a lot of fun talking about it, and I hope you guys got something out of it. If you guys are interested, it's can't tell you where to download them, but you can find this game pretty easily. I'll just say that. But with that, I've got a lot of big videos planned for the whole year of 2026, but especially the first 2 months. I've got some stuff I've been working on in the background that's pretty close to coming out, so look forward to that. I can't wait to share it all with you, and I'm really excited for yet another year on this godforsaken platform. But with that, you guys have a happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Subscribe, follow me on Twitter, or I guess it's X now, completely. Support me on Patreon, and I'll see you in the next video.